everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. In this video, this one's going to be a little bit different. I want to look at the Doomsday Clock. Okay, I'm going to explain what it is if you're not familiar with it. The Doomsday Clock. I want to talk about things that billionaires are doing right now and how these things may, and I'm not saying that they are, but how they may relate to the second coming. My thought is, and I've expressed this several times on the channel, I think that many of those that are at the top of society, that have power, that have money, I wouldn't be surprised if many of them are aware of what's actually going on. And I believe that because I believe in secret combinations, and I believe that Satan literally does have power on this world, that he can appear to people, and it says that in the Doctrine Covenants. It actually gives you a way that you can test to see if you're talking to someone that is an angel or a righteous person or Satan or one of his servants, because they can appear as an angel of light. So I don't know how many, but I do tend to think that those upper echelons of society that have most of the power, control, money, so forth, I think that they do know. I think that they do know that their time is short and that this is going to happen. I really do. And I'm just going to go through a couple examples of things that may point to that may be evidence of that. I've talked about the Doomsday Clock before on the channel. I've been waiting to do this video, and it turns out today's the day. Okay, so first, before I get into what this is, first we need to examine a couple things, a couple of our beliefs in our church. Okay, this is a quote from, Bruce R. McConkie, Doctrinal New Testament Commentary. This generation stands at the end of the sixth day, quote unquote, of the earth's history. Now is the, quote unquote, Saturday evening of time preceding the great millennial Sabbath of the earth. Okay, and then it has the reference here. And then they give a couple scriptures. We got D&C 77. Let's just pull it up. This is the one where we're talking about the book of Revelation. What are we to understand by the book which John saw, which was sealed on the back with 7 seals? The answer: we are to understand that it contains the revealed will, mysteries, and the works of God, the hidden things of his economy concerning this earth during the 7,000 years of its continuance, or its temporal existence. Question: what are we to understand by the 7 seals with which it was sealed? Answer: we are to understand that the first seal contains the things of the first 1,000 years, and the second also of the second 1,000 years, and so on until the 7th. Then down here, verse 12. Question: what are we to understand by the sounding of the trumpets mentioned in the 8th chapter of Revelation? Answer: we are to understand that as God made the whole world in 6 days, and on the 7th day he finished his work and sanctified it, and also formed man out of the dust of the earth, even so, in the beginning of the 7,000 years, will the Lord God sanctify the earth and complete the salvation of man, and judge all things, and shall redeem all things except that which he hath not put into his power. When he shall have sealed all things unto the end of all things, and the sounding of the trumpets of the 7 angels are the preparing and finishing of his work in the beginning of the 7,000 years, the preparing of the way before the time of his coming. Okay, so if you think about the 7,000 years of the earth's temporal existence, starting with Adam and Eve, and then going till the end of the millennium, and you divide it up into 7,000 year periods, it's like the week of the Earth's history. It's like the Earth's history is a week, the millennium is the Sabbath day, and then the 6,000 years before that are the working days. It's the time when most people are having their mortal experience and being judged and trials and all that stuff, right? Right. So, and then you have Abraham 3:4, and that says, "And the Lord said unto me by the Urim and Thummim that Kolob was after the manner of the Lord, according to its times and seasons, in the revolutions thereof, that one revolution was a day unto the Lord, after his manner of reckoning, it being 1,000 years, according to the time appointed unto that whereon thou standest. This is the reckoning of the Lord's time, according to the reckoning of Kolob." Now, I don't know about you, and it's not the point of this video, but I've wondered, like, are we kind of like in a temporal bubble where, like, if you were to step outside and be where the Lord is, does he see all of us going in like fast motion? Of course, he's connected with us, and he's intimately involved in the workings of our lives and the world. But, like, in this sense, is that what it's talking about? I mean, I don't really mean to cause a debate. I don't know. I don't know that I have really a opinion one way or the other, but it's just an interesting thought. And then 2 Peter, it basically just says the same thing that Abraham 3:4 does. Okay? So, over here, this is in the 1983 October ensign. It goes over the seals, right? So seal number 1, about 4,000 to 3,000 BC, and then so on and so forth, and the things that are supposed to happen in each seal, leading up until now. And I know there's a big raging debate about what seal we're in. That's fine. I don't really like to get all nitpicky about it. I tend to think that, if anything, that we are in the 7th seal, but I'm not going to, like, really argue too strongly one way or the other. I think it suffices just to see all the things that are happening in the world right now, and just be open-minded, because whatever you have interpreted when it comes to Scripture could be wrong. Could be wrong. Unless there's like an actual official statement from the church or something like that, unless there's an explicit interpretation of Scriptures given, then just let it go. Just keep it in mind. You can form your ideas, but do not be rigid, because you could be wrong. So anyway, there's that. I'll put all these in the description below. Just like I always do. Here's like a visual representation of the seals. You know, there's the scroll. This is like the Earth's history and each seal being opened up. Here is like an infographic. And it kind of, it's a little bit weird how it's laid out, but it's kind of cool. So here you have the seals. The first seal, during the 6th seal, apostasy, and then the 7th seal, the millennium. Okay. Now, Christians from other churches, they don't have our interpretation of that, because they don't have the Doctrine and Covenants, and they don't believe Joseph Smith was a prophet. So when you look at their kind of like timelines of the world, it's not going to really look the same way that ours does. It'll be, you know, kind of somewhat similar, like, but here's an example of like one of their timelines going from the creation until eternity. Over here. Now this is from cornerstonejacksonville.com. It looks like they do have a concept of, 6,000 years, man's day, and then the Lord's day, which we would just say, obviously the 6 working days of the week of Earth's history, and then the Sabbath, which is the millennium. Over here, you have kind of like how they don't have the concept that a seal is 1,000 years. Okay, for them, the seals are basically events that are going to happen pretty close to each other here in the last days. And then here you have, their concept of a 7-year tribulation period, which I maintain is not an official church. Our church view. I know that there are those that argue for that, but it seems that that's mostly based on these other churches. This comes from their view of the Bible, without, like I said, without modern day revelation, without Joseph Smith translations that define some things. But I've already covered that at great length. Over here, events of the tribulation period, and then here, according to this this timeline, you have the seals opening up right here during the 7-year tribulation. It looks like, according to this theory, they're opening up during the first 3.5 years. Again, I don't accept this at all. I don't think it's right. You can if you want, that's fine. Okay, and then you have statements. You have statements from general authorities talking about the 11th hour, right? Because if we go back here, let's go to one of these graphics. Let's do this one. So if we are in number 6, then that means that this is Saturday. Now, if you're Jewish, then you would say that's Friday, but since we are Christian and we accept Sunday as the Sabbath, that's why Bruce R. McConkie is saying that, this is Saturday. Today would be Saturday, if this is exactly where we're at. And so, being in the 11th hour, that's the last hour of the day before midnight, right? It's the last hour before midnight. At midnight, we enter the next day, Sunday, the millennium, the last 1,000 years. So you can see where I'm going with this when it comes to the Doomsday Clock, right? Because we know that at the end of Saturday and before the millennium begins, before the second coming, it's Doomsday. It is absolutely Doomsday for the wicked. Anyone that's living a telestial law, they're gone. They're not going to be around in the millennium. And starting from the time of Joseph Smith and the opening of this dispensation, the world has absolutely gone crazy. We've had a crazy civil war here in the United States. We've had 2 world wars. It looks like we could be facing a 3rd world war pretty soon, depending on how things go with Russia. We've had a big Cold War. There's been lots of wars, lots of calamities, lots of destruction. Okay, it's been insane. It's been insane. So, yeah, we're like, if nothing else, we're probably in that very 11th hour, probably toward the end of the 11th hour, like 11:55 or something like that. Okay, now let's see. Let's get back to where. Okay, so I went to the Scripture Citation Index. I searched 11th hour because I was curious to see how recently or how many times it's been brought up. And this is what I found. Now, in this case, pretty much in all these instances, they are quoting this scripture. And about the 11th hour, he went out and found others standing idle and said unto them, Why stand ye here all the day idle? Right? Let's see. I think there's more to it than just that. Maybe not. What was I thinking? Let me pull up one of these. It is the 11th hour and the last time that I will call laborers into the vineyard. Okay, so this is coming from DNC 33. Is that over here? Yeah, DNC 33. And it would seem to me that DNC 33 is playing off of Matthew 20, 6 and 9, talking about those laborers going into the vineyard or working for the man. So anyway, it's referencing basically these 2 scriptures, which are essentially related, and it has to do with doing the work of the kingdom before the end. Okay, so I'm just going to show you what I found. Oops, I'm already at the Sorry, I thought I had this all set up and already. So we have one time in 1946 for the 40s, one time in the 50s, and then we have 3 times in the 60s, 4 times in the 70s, 1 time in the 80s, not at all in the 90s, and then 2 times in the year 2000, and then just 1 time in the 2010s. So it's kind of stopped. It seems like that the use of that was more frequent back in the, from 59 until 75. That was like the more busy time in the use or the quotation of 11th hour. And it's interesting that that it was quoted twice in the year 2000, right? Because if we have entered the seventh seal, if the theory about the Palmyra Temple opening, when it was dedicated, that having opened the seventh seal, if that's right, then this kind of makes sense. Or because, let's see, I think it was done in April. I don't know when these were. Let me look at this. I didn't think about this until, let's see, this was, does it say, this was October by Dallin H. Oaks, and then the other one was Sherry Dew, and that was also in October. So, I don't know, if the seventh seal opened at that time, see, I don't like to get into all the minutia of it, because I don't know if it was open, then why are they saying 11th hour right here? But maybe it was open, but maybe you could still say it's the 11th hour because it's going up until Christ comes, and that's when, you get to midnight. So I don't know. You just, whatever. But it's interesting. It's interesting that in the year 2000, it was brought up 2 times. 2 times in the year 2000, and it's especially interesting if President Oaks is the prophet at the time of the second coming. Wouldn't that be interesting that he's one of the ones that said this in the year 2000? So make of that what you will. Now let's move on to the Doomsday Clock and what it means. Okay, so here's a picture of it. Here's a picture of the Doomsday Clock. Here's what it looked like back then, and then now we have our modern version with the wearing the masks and then the all that. So let's zoom in. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist announced on January 20th that the hands of the Doomsday Clock remained at 100 seconds to midnight, the closest it has ever been to apocalypse. Oops, let's actually read this first. The story behind the legendary Doomsday Clock and where it's headed. Okay, the clock, a metaphor for how close existential threats are to exterminating humanity, was developed in 1947 by the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist, a nonprofit founded by Manhattan Project scientists. They were the ones that built the first atomic bomb, following the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Quote, the hands of the Doomsday Clock remain at 100 seconds to midnight, as close to midnight as ever, end quote. Bulletin President Rachel Bronson said in a statement on Friday. The quote, the lethal and fear-inspiring COVID-19 pandemic serves as a historic wake-up call, a vivid illustration that national governments and international organizations are unprepared to manage the truly civilization-ending threats of nuclear weapons and climate change, end quote. Originally set at 7 minutes to midnight, the clock has shifted numerous times in both directions. The furthest from midnight was 17 minutes in 1991. So that's the furthest, and that's an interesting number. There's the 17 again in 1991, following the collapse of the Soviet Union. The current time, equal to 1 minute, and 40 seconds to midnight is the closest it's ever been to Armageddon. Okay, so you get the idea. The closer that they move it to midnight, midnight is basically the end of civilization. It's Armageddon. Now, this was February 2021. I have another one here. This is, where is it? January 23rd, 2022. Okay, so let's read this again. So, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists announced on January 20th that the hands of the Doomsday Clock remain at 100 seconds to midnight, the closest it has ever been to apocalypse. The Bulletin meets every year to determine how much metaphorical time we have to avert catastrophe for humankind. Over the past 75 years, the hands of the clock have moved both backward and forward according to whether steps were taken to address potentially civilization-ending threats such as climate change and nuclear war. In 2020, the Bulletin had set the hands of the clock at 100 seconds to midnight, so that was back in 2020, moving them from 2 minutes. For the second year in a row, the organization determined that not enough progress has been made to move the hands back. According to the Bulletin statement, the decision does not suggest that the situation has stabilized. Quote, on the contrary, the clock remains the closest it has ever been to a civilization-ending apocalypse because the world remains stuck in an extremely dangerous moment. The Doomsday Clock is now holding, or the Doomsday Clock is holding steady, but steady is not good news, said Sharon Squassoni, professor of George Washington University and co-chair of the Bulletin board that sets the clock. Quote, we are stuck in a perilous moment, one that brings neither stability nor security. Positive developments in 2021 failed to counteract negative long-term trends. End quote. In their decision, the Bulletin cited disinformation, global security threats, including nuclear saber rattling, lack of actionable climate policies, disruptive technology, and insufficient worldwide COVID-19 response. Okay, so where did they get this idea of midnight being the end? I don't know. Maybe if I dug deeper, I could find out. I'm not sure. But isn't that interesting that our view is that midnight is essentially when the millennium starts. It's the end. It's the final judgment. And we know we know that. Wait, no, that's pointing to 7. Well, we know that the beginning of the millennium, when Christ comes, it is the end of the world for the wicked. It is Doomsday. It is Apocalypse. It is Armageddon. It's all that stuff, right? So the powers that be that do these kind of things, that do the Doomsday Clock and all that stuff, is this kind of how they view it too? Are they aware of the truth? Are they aware that, yeah, we really are moving into Sunday of the Earth's history? Maybe, maybe not. I tend to think so. I do. Let's look at a couple other things. Jeff Bezos, billionaire. Okay, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but he is building a 10,000 year clock inside of a mountain. Why in the world would you build a 10,000 year clock? And I'll show you what I mean by this. Back in 2018, we brought you news that Amazon's Jeff Bezos was building a giant 10,000 year clock inside a mountain in West Texas. Once completed, the clock will stand 500 feet or 152 meters tall and will be powered by the Earth's thermal cycles. And then here's the actual tweet from Jeff Bezos himself. Installation has begun, 500 foot tall, all mechanical, powered by day-night thermal cycles, synchronized at solar noon. A symbol for long-term thinking. This is what he's officially telling everybody. A symbol for long-term thinking. The 10,000-year clock is coming together thanks to the genius of Danny Hillis, Xander Rose, and the whole clock team. Enjoy the video. And there's a video there that you can watch. Okay. And it should be noted that the clock, called the Clock of Long, is actually the idea of computer scientist and entrepreneur Danny Hillis, who first conceived of the idea back in 1986. So what will this clock do? Not much, actually. The clock is designed to tick just once a year in chime, once per millennium. Yeah, okay. Why would anyone build a clock inside a mountain with the hope that it will ring for 10,000 years? The clock's official website asks. Part of the answer, just so people will ask this question, and having asked it, prompt themselves to conjure with notions of generations and millennia. If you have a clock ticking for 10,000 years, what kinds of generational scale questions and projects will it suggest? If a clock can keep going for 10 millennia, shouldn't we make sure our civilization does as well? The giant clock is set to house... Okay, now this is kind of weird. The giant clock is set to house 5 room-sized anniversary chambers for the 1-year, 10-year, 100-year, 1,000-year, and 10,000-year anniversary of the clock's completion. The 1-year anniversary chamber will hold a mock-up of the planets and the Earth's moon, while the rest of the anniversary chambers will be left for future generations to create. So if you are Jeff Bezos and you know better, if you're aware of this right here and what this means, or even if you're only aware of like this right here, then because there are, you guys, undoubtedly, if there are people that have power, money, influence, there are going to be people that are going to try and think of ways to escape the coming judgment. Don't you think? If you knew that you were not going to make the cut, you've been a wicked person, but you have money, and you think that there's some kind of way to escape this, then wouldn't you try and do that? And could it be, because there's a lot of weird things going on right now with science and advancements in technology, whether it be AI or whether it be quantum physics or whether it be space travel or whether it be finding ways to become immortal, uploading your... This is real. They're really trying to do this. Upload your conscious to a computer. Okay, if they think that in some way they can escape what's about to happen, if Jeff Bezos thinks that he can escape, and he's making this clock, wouldn't this be almost like a mockery of God? Like, oh, so you think that we're only going to last 7,000 years? Well, I'm making a 10,000-year clock. That's how long we're going to be around. And okay, that may not be the case at all. I get it. But it could. I'm just bringing it up. Isn't this a weird thing to do? Some might be like, well, he's just trying to kind of like leave a legacy. He has the money, so that, when you have money and stuff, you do these kind of things. I don't know. I'll leave it up to your judgment. Now, last year, we had some pretty interesting happenings when it comes to space. We had 2 billionaires, do their company's first manned missions to space or trips into space. One was Jeff Bezos, okay, on his Blue Origin rocket. He went up with these other people that I guess bought tickets. I'm not sure the whole story. I think they bought tickets, and they all flew up into space, into like low Earth orbit, essentially. And then you had Richard Branson with Virgin Galactic, that did the same thing. And this was just like a couple of weeks within each other, these two different launches. So, okay, and then you have Elon Musk that is planning the same thing, but his vision is even bigger. He wants to create a colony on Mars of 1 million people, and this is no joke. This is no joke. If you haven't been following it, go look. Okay, so we have people higher up in society that have a doomsday clock. We also have people that are building 10,000 year clocks, and then those same people are going up into space. Okay, and some of them are planning to colonize other planets. Do you think it's possible? And I'm not saying this for sure because I don't know, but do you think it's possible that maybe they think that they can escape what's happening by going into space, by getting off of Earth? If Earth is going to be the place that's cleansed, wouldn't it make sense that maybe you'd give it a shot and see if you could get off Earth before it gets burned? Okay, so let's read this about Elon Musk. Elon Musk just welcomed his second, presumably Earth-bound child with his on-again, off-again partner, Grimes. Yet the billionaire is more determined to leave the planet than ever. In fact, according to Grimes' new Vanity Fair profile, Musk's current plan is to be in space by 2030. When was this? Oh, this is new. This is only 3 days ago. Okay, this article is 3 days old. Apparently, Musk told Grimes he wanted to leave for Mars in 10 years, back in 2020, when she was pregnant with their first child. Quote, I said, could we make it 20? Grimes recalled. Asked about this declaration to a pregnant girlfriend, Musk added, I've been saying since before she was pregnant that I was going to Mars. Nice. Okay, so he plans to get off world, go to Mars, right? And he's also talked a lot about different things that could end civilization. So when he talks to these like different conventions and stuff like that, he talks about how it's smart for us as humanity to start branching out because, what if something happens on Earth that wipes out civilization, and so therefore we have a need to, if we're going to survive as a species, to branch out, start with our own solar system, and start colonizing, right? And that sounds all good and stuff, but if the real intention, if the real intention is that they are just trying to get off world to escape the second coming, that's stupid, and that's really bad. Okay, now, what do we have here? I have more things to cover. I wanted to bring up a couple more times when the 11th hour has come up. So this is Ezra Taft Benson, 1981, 14 Fundamentals in Following the Prophet. Okay, he says, not only is the church growing in numbers today, it is growing in faithfulness, and even more important, our young generation as a group is even more faithful than the older generation. God has reserved you for the 11th hour, the great and dreadful day of the Lord. It's almost like he's like just saying, you younger generation, you are reserved for the second coming. It feels like that's what he's saying. But anyway, he says the 11th hour. Now, interestingly, President Nixon has said it twice. He said it once in 2016, and then he said it 2 years later. And it's during two really key talks of his, I think. The first one is the one that we've already covered a couple times on the channel, the one called True Millennials. He says right here, you are living in the 11th hour, quote unquote. The Lord has declared that this is the last time that he will call laborers into his vineyard to gather the elect from the four quarters of the earth. And then he said it in the Hope of Israel Worldwide Youth Devotional, where he introduced the idea of the Lord's Youth Battalion and also used a lot of explicit language that has to do with the second coming and where we're at right now and the important mission of this generation. So this is what he says. The Lord told the prophet Joseph Smith that now, meaning our day, is the 11th hour and the last time we will call laborers into his vineyard for the express purpose of gathering the elect from the four quarters of the earth. So interesting that the current prophet, he has said it twice, possibly more for all I know. These are just the two that I know about. But he's said it twice within just a couple years of each other. All right, and now to kind of wrap things up. So all this made me think about Saturday's Warrior. If you haven't seen it, then that may or may not be a bad thing or a good thing. It's truly it's something. So, but the name Saturday's Warrior, the person that made this was made by a member of the church, right? And it was back in the it was back in the 80s, and it says Doug gives credit to the title for inspiring him in writing the lyric that would give impetus to the rest of the play. Who are these children coming down, coming down? These are the few, the warriors saved for Saturday, to come the last day of the world. So he made reference to, this being Saturday, being in the last few minutes of Saturday, essentially. Now, I would like... it's probably going to be impossible. I'm probably not going to be able to do it. But I don't know about you, but I feel like if you compare... Okay, if you look at the different decades of cinema, it feels like now, more than ever, there have been so many movies, so many TV shows that have to do with the end of the world. And I just kind of pulled up a few that I can think of. So people have different theories about movies because it seems like secret combinations. They like to put things in movies that do end up happening. And the idea is that, well, there's different theories to it. Some people think that it's like to condition people to accept certain ideas and that they're planning on coming out with. And that could be true. It's kind of like a psychological conditioning. One thing that I think, if you're trying to get things done and you're trying to plan things out and you have Hollywood at your fingers, you think about when they do mock-ups of things like maybe a digital mock-up of like a building when they're trying to plan a building that's going to be constructed, or some kind of project. You do mock-ups, right? You want to kind of like look at it, see it, play around with it before you actually build it, see if there's anything that you can learn from the small scale. And I tend to think that might be the purpose of some movies, is that it's like, hey, we are working on this idea. We want you to make a movie about this. It has to have these elements right here. Go make the movie. The person makes the movie, and then those that are planning things, they watch it and be like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that, or oh yeah, we should, take care of that problem, or and then they view maybe they do surveys on the audience reaction, things that they point out. So, and that could be wrong, but that's something that I think about. So, it seems like maybe since maybe about the 90s, there's been an uptick of movies that have to do with the end of the world. Here you have Armageddon. Okay, you have Linkin Park. Now this isn't a movie. This is an album, but this came out and is called Minutes to Midnight, and it is in reference to the Doomsday Clock. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. You had 2012, which was an absolutely ridiculous movie, just way over the top. But it definitely it had to do with the end of the world, the way that you would think about it in a cinematic way. Um, you had Interstellar, which also had to do. This was a very disappointing movie to me. I was really looking because I like Christopher Nolan a lot. I love all of his movies. I did not like this, but it had to do with Earth coming to its end and having to find another planet to go to colonize. There was The Knowing. This also had to do with the end of the world. Now, a couple Super Bowls ago, sorry for the horrible imagery here. I didn't plan this, but a couple Super Bowls ago, it's no okay. Let's get off that for just a minute. It's horrible. There is something very strange and very bizarre about Super Bowl halftime shows, and I don't want to go off too far on this, but it feels like it's more than just entertainment. Let's just say that, okay? It feels like it's more than entertainment, and it feels like every year it just gets worse and worse and worse. Just horrible. If you're putting on a show, like you have a bunch of like families that are watching, that's the things that they're putting on are just despicable. Now, I will say that this year's halftime show, when I first heard who was going to be in it, it was going to be Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, Eminem, and a couple other people. When I first heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, this one is going to be the worst one yet. But I was actually pleasantly surprised. This Super Bowl this year was actually like wholesome compared to previous halftime shows. Of course, that's like relatively speaking. In an absolute sense, it was bad, but like compared to other ones, it was kind of wholesome. These other ones just like make me just cringe and give me nightmares. But I'm bringing up this one here because this was a couple years ago. This may have been for the 2020 season. So like in 2021, like February 2020, but it was for the 2020 season. I don't know. I can't remember. But this guy right here, this artist goes by The Weeknd. The Weeknd. And, it's probably just looking too far into it, but we are approaching the weekend. If you think of a 6-day work week, okay, Monday through Saturday, then Sunday, it's the weekend, and there's a lot of eyeballs watching this. This is one of the big events every year is the Super Bowl, and including the halftime show. And there were a lot of very, very strange elements in this. Just the obvious thing. Like he's like wearing like a devilish red and black ties, and then these weird. I know the official explanation. He says that he was doing like a commentary on like plastic surgery or people in Hollywood that do things. But no, come on. You have this. All of these people look like they're dead on the floor. This is toward the beginning. You have these horrific looking, I don't know what's with like red glowing eyes, and then, then they light up and it's so horrible. Okay. And then, we've talked about Marvel a lot. Not a lot, but it's come up a few times. I think I want to do a video on like the Marvel movies because that's what we've been watching as a family for the last, I don't know, like month or two. And we're actually going back through and watching it again. Like the first time we were watching them by theatrical release date, but now we're going to Now we're watching them in timeline order. And I am picking up many, many, many themes in these movies that have to do with the last days. And you're going to be like, oh, but they're just comic books. Of course it has to do with the last day. Or it has to do with the end of the world. No. There's a lot of very, very specific words and phrases and depictions that are very specific, and there's actually a lot that's like specific to our church. I'll show you that in a future video, but one of the big ones is Avengers, Infinity War and Endgame, where essentially you have spoiler alerts, by the way. You have a bad guy named Thanos, and he wants to cut the population in half across the entire galaxy. And there's been a lot of people that have picked up on the fact that this is kind of like this is almost like a sympathetic rendering of what the second coming is going to be like when you have the wicked that are cleansed from the earth. It's horrible. That's why it's called the dreadful day of the Lord. But it's there's going to be something like this that happens. There's going to be this kind of depopulation event. Okay, don't know how many, but it's going to be a very large number of people that will not be moving on into the millennium. And no one's happy about that. No one's looking forward to it, but that's the way that things are going to go. And so this is, one of the main characters. I guess he's not one of the main characters, but he kind of is. Fury, Nick Fury. And he, it was all just like at random, like half of the universe just at random, they disappeared. Because the main bad guy was able to, he was able to get all these stones together, these magic stones. Once you have all the infinity stones, then you can do this. And that's what he did. And, so there's a lot of Christians that are talking about this. This is kind of like a rapture type thing, people disappearing. You have Bill and Ted Face the Music, which this is actually a really good movie. I really, really enjoyed this. It was hilarious. But it has to do with the end of the world. And it's funny because Face the Music, it's like that's essentially what the wicked are going to be doing when the second coming happens. And especially those that are the powers of this world. They've been able to have their way with the world for 6,000 years using secret combinations to control things and whatever. But the time is coming really fast that they're going to be facing the music. And of course, spoiler alerts, they're able to find a way to stop it. Like it's like this world-ending event if they don't figure out how to fix this problem. And there's a lot in there. I can't go over it right now. You have Marvel: The Eternals, which this was a really, really dark movie as far as the subliminal, like actual meaning of the movie. This thing right here is called a celestial. Okay, this is a celestial, and they essentially created, I guess you could say, the universe, right? They create suns and stars. And I'll have to do a breakdown of this, but it's really bad. This is a really bad movie. There's even one part. It's like some of it's more subtle. But some of it's just like out in the open. Like there's one part where they're in Babylon, and I don't know, just it's bad. Loki, we've talked about Loki. This one, oh boy, this one's really bad too. Not as far as entertainment goes. It's actually really good. It's a very good idea and concept, but I think it's because it's based on reality. Has to do with time. Has to do with well, I'll just have to do a breakdown on this, but these people, they know what they're doing. It seems clear to me, at this point that they know what they're doing. They absolutely know what they're doing. There's no way that they get so many details right in these stories. And it is not just entertainment. It is not just creativity and being artistic. It is not that. I promise you. And then I don't know what this is, but this is something coming out. It's called The 11th Hour, and it's on I think it's on Amazon. It's coming in AHA original. What is that? Well, I don't care. So The 11th Hour. There are so many more examples, and I know that you know about them too. But so in conclusion, didn't know that this one was going to go this long either. In conclusion, I really do think that there are some, maybe not many, but I think that there are some that are on the other side that know exactly what's going, that know that their time is coming to a close, and they have plans, and I think some of them think that they can work around this or escape, what's about to happen on Earth. So, but that's just my opinion. You'll have to let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you have a different opinion? Do you have any additional information? What are your thoughts on all this? Do you think that we can just take all these things at face value? That this is just a good-hearted thing that they've decided to help everyone know, to raise awareness of how dangerously close we are to destroying ourselves. Do you think that that's what it is? Or do you think that there's maybe more to it than just that? What do you think about these space flights that are happening in this 10,000 year clock? Just put your thoughts in the comments below. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it. Make sure to share it with anyone that might appreciate this information, and I'll talk to you guys later.